A woman on one leg slipped on black ice, and two men dragged the woman into a Milwaukee alley as snow erased the street. A tall veteran with a limp stepped in without raising his voice. A German shepherd wearing service dog, do not pet, stood like a locked gate. The bullies laughed, then the laughter died when the dog did not blink. The veteran said one sentence, "Let the woman go." The alley went silent, and the men backed up like the cold finally found their bones. If karma and justice stories belong on the screen again, share this video, comment where the viewer is watching from, and subscribe. Lake wind drove snow sideways through Milwaukee's older streets, turning streetlights into halos and sidewalks into glass. Grant Walker, a white European-American man around 40, tall with broad shoulders and a strong build, worn down by veteran fatigue, moved with a slight limp in the left knee. An angular face, square jaw, straight nose, and a slightly high forehead held steady under winter shadow. A neatly trimmed beard showed gray at the temples. Dark brown eyes looked warm at rest, sharp when focused. Grant Walker wore one outfit and never changed it: a navy blue thigh-length winter coat, a red-black flannel shirt, faded blue jeans, and brown low-cut leather boots. Beside Grant Walker walked a German shepherd, 5 years old, black and tan, muscular and alert, with upright ears and amber brown eyes. The dog wore a black harness with a white patch that read, "Service dog, do not pet," and a simple dark collar. The German shepherd rarely barked. The German shepherd watched everything. The German shepherd protected Grant Walker with quiet certainty. Grant Walker did not come to Milwaukee to be rescued by the city's noise. Grant Walker came because quiet was supposed to exist somewhere. Grant Walker had done time in places where silence meant danger. Grant Walker had learned discipline the way other men learned prayer, by repeating it until the body believed it. That night, discipline met injustice at the corner of North Avenue and a narrow alley behind a closed grocery. A woman's cry cut through the wind, not loud, not dramatic, the kind of sound that rose from the throat when pain arrived too fast for planning. Grant Walker turned. The German shepherd turned first. Under a flickering security light, a young woman around 28 fought to stay upright on one leg. A prosthetic leg slipped on ice. A pair of crutches skittered away. A dark knit cap fell, and wet hair clung to a pale face. The young woman's posture was trained for balance, but the cold made every correction slower. Two men blocked the alley exit. The first man, around 35, heavy-set with a shaved head and a thick neck, wore a black puffer jacket and work gloves. The heavy-set man moved with confidence that came from repeated success. The second man, around 29, lean with a narrow face and restless eyes, wore a gray hoodie under a construction vest. The lean man kept looking toward the street like a lookout. The heavy-set man grabbed the young woman's coat near the collar. The heavy-set man pulled the young woman toward the wall, using weight instead of skill. The young woman tried to raise a hand. The young woman's fingers shook. Grant Walker stepped into the alley without running. Grant Walker did not shout. Grant Walker did not threaten. Grant Walker stood between the men and the young woman with a steady posture that did not ask permission. The German shepherd moved to Grant Walker's left side, chest forward, head level, ears upright. The German shepherd did not growl. The German shepherd did not lunge. The dog's stillness carried a warning sharper than noise. The heavy-set man squinted at the harness patch. The heavy-set man tried to laugh, but the laugh failed halfway. "Keep moving," the lean man muttered. "Not worth it." The heavy-set man stayed stubborn. "This is private business." Grant Walker's voice came low and even. "Let the woman pick up the crutches." The heavy-set man lifted a hand like a lazy threat. "Or what?" Grant Walker looked directly at the heavy-set man's hand, then at the heavy-set man's eyes. Grant Walker's focus tightened. The warmth left the dark brown eyes. Something old and exact replaced it. The German shepherd shifted one paw forward, slow and deliberate, as if placing a period at the end of a sentence. The lean man took a step back. The heavy-set man released the young woman's coat with a small shove meant to save pride. The shove nearly toppled the young woman again. The young woman caught the wall with a forearm and stayed standing through grit. Grant Walker crouched with a slight wince in the left knee and retrieved one crutch, then the other. Grant Walker handed the crutches to the young woman carefully, keeping space, keeping respect. The young woman's eyes lifted toward Grant Walker. Gray-blue eyes held fear and stubbornness together. Grant Walker spoke again. "Do not touch the woman." The heavyset man tilted his head, trying to find an angle. "Who is Grant Walker? Some kind of hero?" Grant Walker answered without pride. "A man who saw something wrong." The German shepherd watched the heavyset man's mouth. The German shepherd watched the heavyset man's hands. The German shepherd waited. The heavyset man spit into the snow and backed away, pulling the lean man with a jerk of the elbow. The two men vanished into the darker end of the alley. The young woman breathed fast. The young woman's lips looked faintly blue from cold. The young woman's shoulders shook with delayed shock. Grant Walker removed a glove and offered a phone. "Call someone." The young woman hesitated. The young woman's gaze flicked to the street, then back to the alley, as if expecting the men to return with friends. A car door slammed in the distance. The sound made the young woman flinch. Grant Walker lowered the phone slightly, not forcing. The German shepherd stepped closer to the young woman and placed a large black and tan body between the young woman and the alley entrance, as if guarding a stranger because Grant Walker cared. The young woman swallowed. "No phone," the young woman said. "No one." Grant Walker heard the words like a report, not like a confession. "Name." "Emily Carter," the young woman said, voice thin. 28. Grant Walker nodded once. "Grant Walker." Emily Carter looked at the dog. "That dog is working. That dog is working," Grant Walker confirmed. Emily Carter tried to straighten, pride fighting reality. "Emily Carter is fine." Grant Walker's tone stayed calm. "Emily Carter is not fine. Emily Carter is cold. Emily Carter is hurt." A bruise darkened along Emily Carter's wrist. A scrape bled lightly at the edge of Emily Carter's palm. Emily Carter took a step, then another, as if walking away could erase needing help. The prosthetic slipped again on a patch of ice. Grant Walker moved fast, caught Emily Carter's elbow without yanking, then released as soon as balance returned. Grant Walker's touch carried no claim. Emily Carter's eyes shone with anger and shame. Emily Carter does not want charity. Grant Walker gave a small, tired humor that did not mock. Grant Walker does not offer charity. Grant Walker offers heat. The wind slammed snow against brick. A city bus hissed past, nearly empty. Grant Walker pointed toward a lit storefront across the street, a 24-hour diner with a blue neon sign fighting the storm. Grant Walker spoke like a man giving a safe route. Warm light, public place, cameras, coffee. Emily Carter walks with Grant Walker. Emily Carter hesitated again, then nodded once, a surrender to survival. Grant Walker walked at Emily Carter's pace. The German shepherd stayed close, a moving wall. The city watched from behind frosted windows, pretending not to. Inside the diner, warmth hit like mercy. A waitress around 60, short with silver hair and bright eyes that had seen too many nights, looked up from the counter. The waitress's face tightened at Emily Carter's crutches. "What happened?" the waitress asked, not as gossip, as concern. Emily Carter opened the mouth, then stopped. Grant Walker answered instead. "Trouble in the alley. The trouble left." The waitress's jaw set. "That crew again." Grant Walker kept the voice low. "What crew?" The waitress wiped hands on an apron. "Construction boys. Fake security. They shake down people in these blocks. Folks pay because folks are tired." Emily Carter stared into the steam of a water glass like it could hide a past. Grant Walker sat with straight posture. The German shepherd lay under the table, head up, watching feet and shadows. Grant Walker's left knee ached. War memories stirred, not in pictures, in sensation. A corner, a threat, a body pinned. Grant Walker breathed slow, chose the present. Grant Walker looked at Emily Carter. "Emily Carter tells what happened." Emily Carter's voice came quiet. Emily Carter was told to pay cash. Emily Carter did not pay fast enough. The waitress cursed under the breath, then softened. "Honey, that is not security. That is theft." Grant Walker's eyes sharpened again. "Who runs the theft?" Emily Carter's hands trembled around a mug. "A foreman, a man named Rick Dalton." Grant Walker repeated the name once, storing it. Outside, the storm kept moving. Inside, the first thread of justice began. The next morning, Milwaukee looked clean from a distance and cruel up close. Snow-covered stains, ice kept secrets. Grant Walker returned to the same diner at a steady hour, not to hunt, but to listen. Grant Walker had learned the value of routine in hostile places. Routine made patterns visible. Martha Lane, around 60, short with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, softened by real empathy, poured coffee without asking. Martha Lane looked at Grant Walker's limp, then at the service dog, then at Grant Walker's calm face. Martha Lane spoke quietly. "Grant Walker is military." "Former," Grant Walker said. Martha Lane nodded like a person who understood what former really meant. Emily Carter did not come back that morning. Grant Walker did not assume safety. Grant Walker assumed risk. Grant Walker walked the neighborhood after breakfast with the German Shepherd, close and silent. The dog's harness patch drew eyes. Some eyes looked away fast. A small laundromat owner, a man around 52 named Harold Bennett, stood in a doorway with cracked hands and tired posture. Harold Bennett watched Grant Walker approach and forced a smile that did not reach the eyes. Harold Bennett asked, "Grant Walker is new around here." Grant Walker answered, "Grant Walker is passing through." Harold Bennett glanced at the German Shepherd. "That dog is serious. That dog is disciplined," Grant Walker said. Harold Bennett's voice lowered. "Rick Dalton is serious too." Grant Walker stopped. "Harold Bennett knows Rick Dalton." Harold Bennett's shoulders lifted in defeat. "Everybody knows Rick Dalton." Harold Bennett described Rick Dalton as a man around 43, clean-cut with sandy hair and a tidy beard, wearing a reflective foreman jacket like a badge. Rick Dalton smiled easily. Rick Dalton spoke like a professional. Rick Dalton carried intimidation under polite language. Rick Dalton did not use fists first. Rick Dalton used paperwork, fines, and fear. Rick Dalton's crew posted notices on doors. Safety violation, health code, building hazard. Tenants panicked. Small business owners panicked. Then a solution arrived fast. Always cash, always untraceable, always with a warning wrapped in a smile. Harold Bennett's eyes watered from cold and humiliation. "Harold Bennett paid last week." Grant Walker asked, "Why?" Harold Bennett looked at the ground. "Because the inspector came 2 days later. The inspector was real. The inspector found problems Harold Bennett never had before. Harold Bennett paid again." Grant Walker's stomach tightened. The system was not asleep. The system was being used. Grant Walker asked for the inspector's name. Harold Bennett hesitated, then spoke. "Mark Vance, City Inspection." Grant Walker repeated the name in the same calm way. Grant Walker stored Mark Vance beside Rick Dalton. 2 teenage boys walked by and stared openly at the service dog. The boys' faces held the kind of hunger that came from growing up around force. The German Shepherd did not react. The German Shepherd only watched. At the edge of the block, a box truck idled too long. A man leaned from the driver's window. The man looked around 37 with a thin mustache and a hard smile. The man wore a contractor hat. The man's gaze fixed on Grant Walker, then on the German Shepherd. The man called out, "Service dog in the neighborhood. Cute." Grant Walker did not respond. The man's smile sharpened. "Rick Dalton does not like surprises." Grant Walker's dark brown eyes turned sharp. "Rick Dalton sends messages." The man shrugged like it was playful. "Rick Dalton keeps the street safe." Grant Walker stepped closer, slow, controlled. The German Shepherd rose and stood at Grant Walker's left knee, posture tall and steady. The dog's amber brown eyes did not blink. The man in the truck swallowed. The man's smile faltered. Grant Walker spoke with quiet clarity. "Threats are not safety. Extortion is not safety." The man's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Grant Walker should leave." Grant Walker answered. "Grant Walker leaves when the work is done." The truck rolled away. Grant Walker returned to the diner and asked Martha Lane about Emily Carter again. Martha Lane's face tightened. "Emily Carter has been sleeping in the back of the church pantry some nights. Pastor helps when pastor can. Emily Carter hides from Rick Dalton." Grant Walker asked for the church. Martha Lane gave the address and added, "Grant Walker should be careful. Rick Dalton has friends." Grant Walker had been careful in places where friends carried rifles. Grant Walker did not underestimate a smiling man with paperwork. At the church, a small brick building with snow piled along the steps, a pastor opened the door. Pastor Jonah Mills, around 59, tall and thin, with a gentle face and tired eyes, wore a simple wool sweater and moved like a man carrying many burdens. Pastor Jonah Mills saw the service dog patch and nodded with respect. Pastor Jonah Mills asked, "Grant Walker wants Emily Carter." Grant Walker answered, "Grant Walker wants to know if Emily Carter is safe." Pastor Jonah Mills led Grant Walker to a warm side room. Emily Carter sat near a space heater, face pale, jaw set, posture guarded. Emily Carter's eyes widened at Grant Walker, then narrowed in suspicion, as if kindness always came with a bill. Grant Walker sat across from Emily Carter with distance and calm. Grant Walker spoke first. Emily Carter was attacked. Emily Carter is being hunted. Emily Carter's voice stayed flat. Emily Carter is being collected. Pastor Jonah Mills looked confused, Emily Carter explained. Rick Dalton says Emily Carter owes fees. Rick Dalton says the apartment violations are Emily Carter's fault. Rick Dalton says the prosthetic counts as damage risk. Rick Dalton is lying. Grant Walker felt heat rise behind the ribs. Grant Walker held it down with discipline. Grant Walker asked, Emily Carter paid anything? Emily Carter shook the head. Emily Carter refused. Rick Dalton sent Derek Shaw and Caleb Price. Grant Walker's jaw tightened. Names matched. Pattern confirmed. Emily Carter added one more detail that turned danger into something colder. Rick Dalton keeps a list, Emily Carter said. A list of people who cannot fight back. Rick Dalton calls it easy accounts. The room fell quiet except for the heater. Grant Walker looked at the German Shepherd. The dog's ears stayed upright. Grant Walker spoke like a vow made without drama. Emily Carter will not be an account. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. The confrontation began with a clipboard. Rick Dalton arrived at the laundromat at midday, coat clean, boots polished, smile ready. Rick Dalton looked around 43, average height, fit build, sandy hair combed back, tidy beard, and eyes that measured weakness like numbers. Rick Dalton carried a foreman jacket and a laminated badge that looked official enough to scare tired people. Two men followed Rick Dalton, Derek Shaw, around 35, heavy-set with a shaved head and thick neck, and Caleb Price, around 29, lean with a narrow face and restless eyes. Both men wore contractor vests and gloves, costumes for predation. Rick Dalton taped a bright orange notice to Harold Bennett's door. Harold Bennett stood stiffly, face gray with dread. Grant Walker stepped out from under the diner awning across the street, moving with the familiar limp and the same steady posture. The German Shepherd walked at Grant Walker's left side, harness patch clear, ears upright, gaze steady. Rick Dalton's smile froze for a fraction. Rick Dalton regained it quickly. Grant Walker again? Grant Walker stopped at a respectful distance. Grant Walker did not crowd. Grant Walker did not posture. Grant Walker spoke evenly. Remove the notice. Rick Dalton laughed softly, like a teacher correcting a child. Grant Walker does not understand the law. Grant Walker's dark brown eyes turned sharp. Rick Dalton understands fear. Derek Shaw shifted weight, trying to look large. Caleb Price scanned for witnesses. The German Shepherd held still. The dog's calm felt like a locked door. Rick Dalton pointed at the notice. Safety violation, city code. Harold Bennett is lucky Rick Dalton is offering a fast fix. Harold Bennett's voice cracked. Harold Bennett fixed that months ago. Rick Dalton ignored Harold Bennett and spoke to Grant Walker, voice polite, threat hidden. Grant Walker should mind Grant Walker's business. Grant Walker answered, "This is Grant Walker's business now." Rick Dalton's eyes flicked to the service dog patch. Cute harness. Rick Dalton hopes that dog is trained. Grant Walker's tone stayed flat. The German Shepherd is trained. The German Shepherd is not here for entertainment. Derek Shaw stepped forward half a pace. Derek Shaw tried to force dominance with proximity. The German Shepherd rose slightly, not lunging, only standing taller, head level. Amber brown eyes locked on Derek Shaw's hands. Derek Shaw stopped. Caleb Price swallowed and muttered, "Derek Shaw, leave it." Rick Dalton lifted a palm, pretending calm, but the mouth tightened. Grant Walker is making a scene. Grant Walker replied, "Rick Dalton is making victims." Rick Dalton leaned closer, voice dropping. Rick Dalton can make life hard. Grant Walker did not flinch. Grant Walker had lived inside hard. Grant Walker spoke with deliberate restraint. Rick Dalton will not touch Harold Bennett again. Rick Dalton will not touch Emily Carter again. Rick Dalton's smile returned, thin and mean. Emily Carter is not Grant Walker's problem. Grant Walker's jaw flexed once. Emily Carter is a human being. Rick Dalton turned to Derek Shaw with a nod. Derek Shaw stepped toward Grant Walker, as if the body could intimidate what the mind could not. Grant Walker moved one step, positioning the left shoulder slightly forward. weight balanced, hands open, not a fighting stance, a ready stance, the kind learned when violence was common and control was survival. The German Shepherd remained anchored at Grant Walker's left knee, silent and steady. The dog's presence changed the math. A small crowd gathered, neighbors in winter hats, a mother holding a child's hand, an older man with a cane. Eyes watched, like people deciding whether hope was safe. Rick Dalton noticed the crowd. Rick Dalton adjusted tactics. Rick Dalton raised the voice, performing legitimacy. Rick Dalton is here to keep the community safe. Martha Lane stepped out from the diner with a coffee pot in one hand, like a weapon of hospitality. Martha Lane looked at Rick Dalton with open disgust. Martha Lane spoke loud enough for the crowd. Rick Dalton is here to collect cash. Rick Dalton's face hardened. Martha Lane should be careful. Martha Lane answered, Martha Lane has been careful for years. Being careful has not helped. Pastor Jonah Mills appeared at the church steps down the block, hands in coat pockets, eyes steady. Pastor Jonah Mills called out, calm but clear. Pastor Jonah Mills will witness anything that happens. Rick Dalton's smile died. Grant Walker used the opening. Rick Dalton leaves. Rick Dalton stared at Grant Walker, then at the German Shepherd, then at the crowd. Rick Dalton calculated. Rick Dalton stepped back, but Rick Dalton did not surrender. Rick Dalton pointed at Grant Walker. Grant Walker is trespassing into things Grant Walker does not understand. Grant Walker replied, Grant Walker understands injustice. Rick Dalton nodded at Derek Shaw and Caleb Price. The three men retreated toward the box truck, parked around the corner. Before leaving, Rick Dalton turned and spoke softly to Grant Walker, only Grant Walker close enough to hear. Rick Dalton knows where Emily Carter sleeps, Rick Dalton said. The words were meant to cut. Grant Walker's eyes turned sharp in a way that made Rick Dalton's throat tighten. Grant Walker spoke quietly. Rick Dalton will not go near the church. If Rick Dalton tries, Rick Dalton will meet consequences. Rick Dalton tried to laugh again, but the laugh failed. Rick Dalton left. The crowd exhaled like people who had been holding breath for years. Harold Bennett's shoulders shook. Grant Walker placed a hand briefly on Harold Bennett's shoulder, then removed it, respect intact. Grant Walker spoke to Martha Lane. Call the police. Martha Lane's mouth tightened. Police come late. Grant Walker answered. Then Grant Walker brings proof. The German Shepherd looked up at Grant Walker as if waiting for orders. Grant Walker gave one quiet command. The dog's ears stayed upright. The dog's body stayed still. Control did not mean weakness. Control meant readiness. Grant Walker did not chase Rick Dalton into the storm. Grant Walker chased facts. That night, Grant Walker sat at a corner table in the diner with a legal pad and a pen. The German Shepherd lay under the table, head up, eyes tracking the door. Grant Walker's discipline looked ordinary until pressure arrived. Martha Lane slid a plate of soup across the table without comment. Martha Lane's kindness came without questions, the best kind. Pastor Jonah Mills joined quietly, carrying a folder of printed notices collected from church members. Pastor Jonah Mills's gentle face looked harder under fluorescent light. Pastor Jonah Mills spoke first. Pastor Jonah Mills has heard the same story from different mouths. Grant Walker asked, How many? Pastor Jonah Mills opened the folder. 23 families, 7 small businesses. Grant Walker wrote the numbers down. Harold Bennett arrived next, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning. Harold Bennett carried a paper bag with receipts. Harold Bennett's voice shook. Harold Bennett paid in cash. No receipt, but Harold Bennett has bank withdrawals. Grant Walker asked, Any names on the notices? Harold Bennett pointed. Rick Dalton's company name. Dalton Property Solutions. Grant Walker's pen paused. Real company, Martha Lane snorted. Real thieves? Grant Walker asked a careful question. Mark Vance. Harold Bennett swallowed. Mark Vance came after every refusal. Mark Vance found problems that disappeared after cash. Pastor Jonah Mills added a detail. Mark Vance attends a private business breakfast hosted by Rick Dalton. Pastor Jonah Mills saw photos. Grant Walker felt the old anger again, the kind that rose when power targeted the weak. Grant Walker kept breathing slow. Anger could fuel. Anger could also blind. Grant Walker did what Grant Walker always did when the mission was moral instead of military. Grant Walker broke the problem into steps. Step 1, verify Mark Vance's connection. Step 2, document Rick Dalton's cash pathway. Step 3, protect Emily Carter. Step 4, bring law and community together. Grant Walker visited the city inspection office the next morning, not as a threat, as a citizen. A receptionist looked up, around 26, with tired eyes and neat braids. The receptionist wore a sweater with a city logo and a guarded expression that came from being asked to lie politely all day. The receptionist's name tag read, Tara Simmons. Grant Walker introduced Grant Walker with calm politeness. The German Shepherd stayed close, harness patch visible. Tara Simmons looked at the service dog and softened slightly. How can Tara Simmons help? Grant Walker asked for public complaint procedures and asked for Mark Vance's supervisor. Tara Simmons hesitated, then gave a name. Supervisor, Denise Harper. Denise Harper, around 51, black woman with short hair and sharp eyes, stepped out after a short wait. Denise Harper's posture carried authority earned, not borrowed. Denise Harper looked at Grant Walker's steady face. Denise Harper looked at the service dog. Denise Harper looked at the limp. Denise Harper asked, "What is this about?" Grant Walker laid out a clean summary, no embellishment, extortion notices, cash demands, timed inspections, vulnerable targets, and a named inspector. Denise Harper's eyes narrowed. "Evidence," Grant Walker answered. "Evidence is being collected." Denise Harper's tone stayed firm. "Bring it. Denise Harper will not ignore it." Outside, Grant Walker's phone buzzed. Pastor Jonah Mills called. Pastor Jonah Mills's voice was tight. "Rick Dalton's truck is near the church." Grant Walker's body turned into motion before thought finished. At the church, the box truck sat idling again. Derek Shaw stood near the side door, posture casual, hands in pockets. Caleb Price leaned against the truck, eyes darting. Rick Dalton was not visible. Emily Carter stood inside the entryway, crutches under arms, face pale with fear, trying to look brave. Grant Walker walked up with steady steps. The German Shepherd matched pace, silent. Derek Shaw smirked. "Grant Walker is fast." Grant Walker spoke calmly. "Leave." Caleb Price muttered, "Rick Dalton wants a talk." Grant Walker's eyes turned sharp. "Rick Dalton hides." Derek Shaw stepped closer and lowered the voice. "Emily Carter owes." Grant Walker replied, "Emily Carter owes nothing." Derek Shaw's hand lifted slightly, not yet a strike, testing. The German Shepherd shifted half a step, placing a muscular body between Derek Shaw and Grant Walker's injured knee, posture alert, ears upright, eyes locked. Derek Shaw's hand dropped. Pastor Jonah Mills stepped out onto the steps, phone raised. "Pastor Jonah Mills is recording." Neighbors appeared again. A few more this time. Fear was thinning. Caleb Price's eyes flicked to the phones. Caleb Price's mouth tightened. Grant Walker spoke to Emily Carter, voice steady. "Go inside." Emily Carter hesitated, then obeyed. Grant Walker turned back to Derek Shaw and Caleb Price. "No contact, no trespass. Next approach will be documented and delivered to authorities." Derek Shaw tried to laugh. "Grant Walker thinks the police care." Grant Walker answered, "Denise Harper cares. Federal agencies care when extortion and corruption touch public office." That last phrase hit like a cold wave. Caleb Price's eyes widened. Caleb Price took a step back. Derek Shaw's smirk faded. The truck rolled away again. Grant Walker did not celebrate. Grant Walker knew cornered predators got dangerous. Grant Walker returned to the diner and set a meeting with Denise Harper for the next day. Martha Lane looked at Grant Walker and said quietly, "Martha Lane is proud." Grant Walker shook the head once, not accepting praise. Grant Walker is focused. The German Shepherd rested a head against Grant Walker's boot, a silent promise. Winter did not end in one day. Justice did not either. Grant Walker met Denise Harper in a plain office with fluorescent light and a view of falling snow. Grant Walker brought organized packets, copies of notices, time-stamped photos, witness statements from Pastor Jonah Mills and Martha Lane, and a chart of withdrawal patterns tied to reported threats. Denise Harper reviewed everything, with a face that did not show surprise, only grim confirmation. Denise Harper spoke quietly. Denise Harper has suspected Mark Vance for months. Denise Harper did not have enough to move. Grant Walker answered, "Now there is enough." Denise Harper nodded. Denise Harper will coordinate with internal affairs. Denise Harper will request law enforcement support. The disciplined action began not with a raid, but with control of timing. 2 days later, a coordinated operation unfolded at the laundromat, the diner block, and the church area. Officers arrived in marked vehicles. A plainclothes investigator stood near Rick Dalton's truck with a folder and a radio. A city auditor carried a sealed envelope. Rick Dalton arrived confident, coat clean, smile loaded, clipboard ready. Rick Dalton did not expect Denise Harper. Denise Harper stepped forward with posture like steel. Rick Dalton is being served. Rick Dalton's smile cracked. Denise Harper is making a mistake. Denise Harper's eyes stayed cold. Mark Vance is being interviewed right now. Rick Dalton's gaze flicked left. A city vehicle sat near the curb. Two investigators escorted Mark Vance out of the building across the street. Mark Vance, around 45, pale and sweating, looked smaller than the authority Mark Vance used to wear. Derek Shaw stepped out from behind the truck, face hard. Caleb Price hovered near the passenger door, eyes darting. Grant Walker stood with Martha Lane and Pastor Jonah Mills at a distance, not interfering, only witnessing. The German Shepherd stood at Grant Walker's left side, harness patch visible, posture calm. The dog's silence held the line. Rick Dalton spotted Grant Walker. Rick Dalton's eyes filled with the kind of hate that came from losing control. Rick Dalton stepped toward Grant Walker, forgetting cameras, forgetting uniforms, forgetting reality. Derek Shaw followed. An officer moved quickly to block, hand raised. Derek Shaw tried to shove past the officer. The German Shepherd shifted one step, not toward the officer, toward Derek Shaw, body angled, ears upright, amber brown eyes fixed. The dog did not bark. The dog's control looked like certainty. Derek Shaw stopped again, the same way Derek Shaw stopped before. A bully's courage often depended on easy victims. Grant Walker did not speak. Grant Walker let the uniformed officers do the speaking. Rick Dalton's voice rose, desperate now. Those people paid for services. Denise Harper held up documents. Those people paid under threat. Those notices were fraudulent. Those inspections were timed. Rick Dalton's face tightened. Proof. Martha Lane stepped forward with a shaking hand and a steady voice. Martha Lane has video. Martha Lane has audio. Martha Lane has 3 years of fear written in calendars. Pastor Jonah Mills stepped forward next, calm and clear. Pastor Jonah Mills has witness statements. Pastor Jonah Mills has dates, times, names. Harold Bennett stepped forward, trembling, then straightened. Harold Bennett has bank records. Emily Carter stepped out from the church entryway, bundled against cold, crutches firm under arms. Emily Carter's face was pale, but the eyes held fire. Emily Carter spoke loudly enough to carry. Rick Dalton targeted people who could not run. Rick Dalton targeted people who needed heat, shelter, and safety. Rick Dalton stared at Emily Carter with contempt. Emily Carter is nothing. Grant Walker's dark brown eyes sharpened in the old way. Grant Walker spoke once, low and even. Emily Carter is not nothing. The German Shepherd stayed silent, watching Rick Dalton's hands. Rick Dalton's shoulders sagged as the legal net tightened. Officers moved in, handcuffs clicked. Derek Shaw cursed. Caleb Price looked like a man waking from a bad choice. Mark Vance was placed in a separate vehicle, eyes down. The neighborhood watched from windows and sidewalks. No one cheered loudly. This was not entertainment. This was relief. Over the next weeks, Denise Harper worked with community leaders. A local legal aid group opened a temporary clinic at the church. A small fund helped cover emergency heating bills and repairs. A bulletin board in the diner posted resources instead of fear. Emily Carter received help getting a stable room through a vetted program. Pastor Jonah Mills arranged physical therapy contacts. Martha Lane made sure Emily Carter ate real meals again. Grant Walker did not stay forever. On the last night before leaving, Martha Lane placed a warm slice of pie in front of Grant Walker without asking. Pastor Jonah Mills set a small envelope beside it. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note signed by dozens of neighbors. Not praise, not grand speeches, just thanks and phone numbers and offers to help one another. Emily Carter arrived with a steadier posture, prosthetic adjusted, face still carrying loss, but not drowning in it. Emily Carter looked at Grant Walker and struggled for words. Grant Walker offered a small, honest humor. Grant Walker has heard worse speeches. Emily Carter laughed once, surprised by the sound. Emily Carter is still here because Grant Walker stopped. Grant Walker shook the head. Emily Carter is still here because Emily Carter kept walking. The German Shepherd leaned against Grant Walker's boot, as if agreeing. Outside, snow fell gently, softer than before. Milwaukee did not become perfect. Milwaukee became awake. And sometimes that was enough to begin. A hard winter can make people believe cruelty is normal. Faith says otherwise. Sometimes God does not stop the storm. Sometimes God places a disciplined heart on the sidewalk at the exact moment someone cannot stand alone. If this story felt close to real life, share it with someone who needs quiet hope. Leave a comment and tell where the viewer is watching from. Subscribe for more stories of justice, healing, and second chances. May God bless every home listening tonight. May God keep the weary safe, and may help arrive before the cold wins.